So I recently removed buckthorn from this area, and it was done via forestry mulching, and of course that comes back, but I decided to disc this area with a new Land Pride disc that I purchased. And there were a few stumps mixed in. What I found interesting is that the buckthorn stumps got pulled up really easy, and the root system is not very strong, or it's susceptible to being pulled up. So that's kind of nice. And I'm going to be planting a clover fescue mix through here. There's a few examples where the roots just get pulled right up. It was fairly dry when I did this, so keep that in mind. But you'd think that if it was wet, it'd be even easier for those roots to come out, unless it was absolutely too wet. There's another example right here. That's small, I guess. Now here's one that didn't come out. That was a pretty big one though, compared to my hand size. That was probably, like a 6-inch around tree, or close to it, and the root's very much intact. Here's one that pretty much pulled out. And I only went over this a couple times, so it's not like I spent hours on pulling all these stumps out. There's one that came out easy. Still sort of in there. That's a big, it's hard to tell, but that's kind of a big area of a stump. Anyway, you get the general idea. So this is what I was going through before. And it looks like not much, but these are all buckthorn trees and regrowth of seedlings that are coming up that I just disced right through. And it used to be a wall of buckthorn like that. Just 10, 20 plus foot tall buckthorn, well established, all along over on that side. And I've been mowing this area after it got brush cut. So a lot of it comes back wispy like this. Kind of like that, but at the base of it is typically pretty big roots relative to the size of the plant itself above ground. So I'm going to try more of this disking. Just go and mow and then disc right after. You can see some other areas that are mowed down. Just see if it can help me with pulling out stumps. Then I'll plant some clover fescue mix. I think I mentioned that. You can kind of see, so right now it's a little bit like a trail, but we'll get some low-lying ground cover in here that's easier to mow if I want to. Keeps soil erosion down, kind of blocks other stuff, weeds from coming in. Because right now it's all, everything that wants to grow is buckthorn. And if I can get large swaths taken care of, I think this will work really well in this part of the woods. Tree cover and canopy is pretty solid. There's a good mix of oaks, a lot of white bur oaks. There's some birch, black cherry. We've got a good mix of elm and some other less desirables, box elder as well. So we'll come through here, and right now we're just keeping this area open as a shooting lane, as well as just an area to recreate compared to the dense buckthorn that we had here before. So we want to keep this from coming back, or fully kill it, I guess. And then the kids can ride the four-wheeler through here, or we can go hunting, or just enjoy walks in the woods that we've not otherwise been able to. So I think that'll be a new technique that I'll try. I'll include what the disc looks like here too. so you can get an idea. But I'm pulling it behind a 3 Series John Deere 3046R, and it's a Land Pride DH1572, which seems to be a nice match, and it's narrow enough in the woods where you can make, you get too wide and it's hard to get around trees. And in this area, you can't tell that I went around trees, but in other parts of the woods, going in and out of those areas is important. And what I would typically do for this area where it's all worked up, it's a little bit uneven. I could probably plant right into this and then put a drag on it, but what I'll do is I'll disc it to about this level, depending on stumps and everything. I'll run over it with my landscape rake, which is also a Land Pride. I think it's a 72-inch rake, maybe. And then I'll broadcast seed, then I'll run a drag over the top of it. And the drag is common. I mean, you'll find them at Tractor Supply and stuff like that, but just good, creates good seed to soil contact. So that's what we'll do to finish things off and make it a little bit more even. That way when we're driving the tractor or walking in the future, it'll be at least somewhat level. Still following the contour of the land, but no major ankle breakers, I guess. So this is the disc that I purchased. Haven't used it a ton yet. Land Pride DH1572. I've got it parked right inside the door here. I've got my tractor in for service right now. Seems super heavy duty. Looks like the grease zerks are really accessible. Can't complain. I've really appreciated having the notched discs front and back. Seems to work things up really well. It's heavy enough. It's something like 700 plus pounds. And I think it'd be pretty impossible for me to really do any damage to the implement. Of course, these discs over time will wear out, but the frame itself is super heavy duty, and I like it so far. So they make a nice disc for sure. So here's some of the seed I've been planting. This is called Loggers Trail by Deer Creek. I've been pretty pleased with it. A lot of the initial grasses have kind of gone away. I did mow it once within the guidelines. I think I mowed it about 8-9 inches tall, maybe even 10 inches. So the grass has is a little bit subdued compared to the clover at this point, which I did not cut as part of that because it was so short at that time. It's a mixture of clover. I'm pretty excited about it. I haven't seen a ton of deer activity on the clover yet, but I think as it flowers next year, this is the first year I've had it on the ground. I think next year they might like it a little bit more. Apologies for the wind here if you can hear that. But it seems to be a pretty dense cover. Some areas the clover is not as thick and the grass is thicker. A good chunk of that grass is an annual ryegrass just to get some ground cover. But there are some perennial fescue type mixed seeds in here as well. So it's pretty good. The biggest challenge I would have is that I've been spot spraying this burdock and things that's coming in, like right here. And of course, any overspray would kill the clover as well, which is less than ideal. So here's a good example of how it's coming in some spots. Really hard to get rid of. I probably should have sprayed it earlier in the year before it went to seed, but I let some areas go to seed on accident. So I think the toughest part about clover is it's kind of hard if you want to use chemicals, or if you're open to that. With grass, you could just come in and spray the whole thing. Anything that's not in there that's not at grass would ultimately be a casualty, and that could work well if you're trying to create sort of that monoculture to start with as a buckthorn replacement. Clover I think will be good for the environment and turkey, deer, pollinators, etc., but you kind of have to walk around and spot spray. So in this area I'm right by my septic system, so it's you'll see the white caps. And in some areas I kind of came through here and tore it up a little bit by not being in four-wheel drive. It was a little slippery with the tractor, but in general, I think you get the idea. And I've planted this about 2.5 acres worth down to the road. So I'm excited to see what it looks like next year. Came in nice. Loggers Trail, the benefit too is that it's designed to grow in dense shade. Some of these areas, not super dense from a shade standpoint, but in other areas, the woods are still pretty thick. And so being able to have something that does well with a good amount of shade throughout the day was really important to me as well. Hope this helps. Let me know if you have questions in the comments.